Let's start the show talking Utah Jazz. I know that's a shocker. Okay, I was right. All right, let's move on.
All right, yeah. What do you know?
Hey,
What do you say?
so we take a lot of heat on this show because we don't necessarily pander to the Jazz. We tend to be the truth tellers on the Utah Jazz. Yeah, we're just casuals, is
Yeah,
what
we're
everybody. You
casuals.
guys don't watch games. You're casuals.
Yeah.
Fat ass. Anyway, but the
Wow.
point is, that might have been projecting. The point is that we talk a lot of hoop on this show, and we don't generally pull punches, right? I think that's what you've come to expect from us. So, we've had a lot of sourcing going on over the last year and a half on the Jazz. And recently we've been telling you that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert have a strained relationship, and that really the situation with Don and Rudy is, hey, they're not friends. I specifically said yesterday on the show, and have been for the last 10 days or so, saying these two are not friends, but you don't have to be best friends to win and to be teammates. So Donovan Mitchell went on a podcast called Post It Up with Chris Haynes and said this.
You don't always got to be, like the bestest of friends with people you work with. But at the end of the day, if you work towards a common goal that's beneficial to the team, that's what's first. We want to win. I think that's something that we have in that common goal. And, I don't think either one's so worried about what's being said around us. I think for me, especially, I've been to my teammates yo, this is what our goal is, and this is what we want to do. This is how we want to go accomplish it. We're in the fourth seed right now, and, seeding doesn't necessarily matter, but it's how can we be the best when it's time? And like I said, it starts with me and Big Fella. If we want to get to ultimately win a championship, it's going to start with us. And
I mean, he said, and that came out after the show yesterday. I want to make that perfectly clear. That came out after the show aired yesterday, and we've been saying that almost a direct quote, word for word. They're not friends, but they don't have to be friends to win.
You don't always got to be, the bestest of friends with people you work with.
How does that? I was stunned.
I just think it's the perfect way to describe the situation.
Stunned.
I mean, we've seen this. We've seen this before. We've seen this before in the league where I mean, everybody always brings up Shaq and Kobe, but you look at the James Harden situation in Brooklyn. You look at any of these situations that you see around the league. And these guys are not friends. I mean, these guys, I think there's a common misconception. I think people think that NBA players, they get to the arena, they get dressed, they go on the floor, they play their game, they go home and play 2K together. I think that's that people assume that NBA players do, and it's not. NBA players outside of the building have their own life and their own family, just like the rest of us. And I think it's more of a situation like going to the office. And I'm not trying to oversimplify this or make anyone feel silly, but that's basically what it is. You got to understand, this is their full-time job. They don't they treat playing basketball the same way, we treat going to Yelp, or you treat going to your job, or whatever, So when Don says, hey, we don't have to be friends to win, I think that's 100% true. You don't have to be best friends with the people in the room. But what you do have to be is willing to coexist on the floor in an effort to win a championship. And that's what I think people have to understand. Now, does it help if you're friends? Absolutely.
Yes.
Does it help if you're really tight? 100%. Does it help that Steph and Clay are really close friends, and Draymond, Steph, and Clay have a really good working relationship, and everything's kosher? Yes, it does. It absolutely does. But if Donovan and Rudy are not the absolute bestest of friends outside of the building, that doesn't mean that they can't have success on the floor. And that's what I think Donovan is trying to say here. And I think the other interesting thing, and you had kind of pointed this out when we had first listened to this, was Donovan never really mentions Rudy's name. He just
did not say it one
him
time.
I guess the third person, if you will. He's a 3-time defensive player of the year, or me and Big Fella. I just think that Donovan was measured. I don't think that Donovan was sending any under the radar messages, but I think the clear message was, hey, we're not friends, but we have to coexist, and that's the case.
We're not friends, but we don't need to be in order to win.
You don't always got to be, the the bestest of friends with people you work with, but at the end of the day, if you work towards a common goal that's beneficial to the team, that's what's first.
But I also think one of the other bombs that came out of this podcast is something we've talked about on this show as well. Sources have told us repeatedly that Rudy Gobert taking a shot at Donovan Mitchell by talking about Devin Booker and comparing Devin Booker and really bothered Donovan Mitchell. And Don said in this podcast, and by the way, thank you. Like 5 or 6 people sent me a link to the podcast yesterday. I think Jeremy Bolton, you were the first one who sent it to me, so I really appreciate that. Thank you. I was actually listening to it when Jeremy sent me that link. So I really do appreciate you guys sending that to me. But I think there is no doubt that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert have relationship issues. I think there is no doubt that Rudy Gobert talking openly about how Devin Booker's stepped his game up and Donovan Mitchell essentially has not, I think really bothered Don. I think Rudy Gobert, going after Donovan Mitchell, verbally in the locker room on his defense and, his shot selection did not sit well with Donovan Mitchell. I think Rudy Gobert's obsessive complaining to the officials does not sit well with Donovan or his teammates. And the fact that Rudy Gobert does not take that criticism well. I've been told multiple times that conversation is one that is stuck in the craw of his teammates.
Yeah.
That when Rudy Gobert called out Jordan Clarkson for shooting too much and taking bad shots, other teammates said, well, hey, why don't we talk about you complaining to the officials obsessively? And Rudy Gobert did not take that well and would not have the conversation.
Yeah.
That did not sit well with his teammates. All of that to say, this team doesn't have great chemistry. But do they need it to win a championship? I would tell you they do.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to be best friends. Let's not convolute or cross the issues here. You don't need to be best friends to win a championship. We've seen that. The Chicago Bulls have never been a better example of anything. Michael Jordan was not close friends with just about anybody on that team. And now we know that, right? They won 6 championships and they were a dynasty, right? Kobe and Shaq hated each other. I was in the locker room for that. Kobe and Shaq hated each other and they won multiple championships together. The issue is that when guys like Pippen and Jordan don't get along, when guys like Shaq and Kobe don't get along, those are 2 of the best players in the entire league.
Yeah.
Neither Donovan nor Rudy are 2 of the best players in the entire league. This would be akin to Kevin Durant and James Harden figuring it out and winning a championship. Now, they didn't because I think today's player is a little different than those guys I mentioned, right? But I think when you look at this particular Utah Jazz team, I think somebody needs to remind Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert that they've accomplished absolutely nothing together.
Yeah.
They have not won anything. They have not grown together as a team. They have not taken the next step and fought through the adversity. They have instead internalized that and let that separate them.
Yeah.
That's the issue for the Utah Jazz. That's the thing that they have to remember. And right now, I just don't feel like I don't feel like the Utah Jazz have chemistry on any way, shape, or form. I really don't. I think the other thing that this team lacks is a vocal leader. I think, I think when you talk about what Joe Ingles brought to this club, that's what Joe Ingles brought to this club. Because in a lot of ways, Joe Ingles was a mediator. Joe Ingles was a guy that would calm the waves in the water when they got too choppy for this team to navigate.
Right.
And that guy's gone now. And there is not a vocal leader in this locker room. Rudy Gobert doesn't have, what's the word? The cachet, the swagger to call guys out.
The clout.
And be respected. Clout's a good word. I think that Rudy Gobert doesn't have accountability, so he doesn't have the clout and the respect of his teammates.
Yeah.
Right? And this idea, well, if Donovan can't handle it, he can pack his shit and go to New York. Well, it actually doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Because the way locker rooms work, there is an alpha dog. Or you're not very good. And right now, they're not very good because there's not an alpha dog.
Mm-hmm.
This is a team that is fine in the regular season. They are a good regular season team. They are a bad postseason team. They've been that way for years. And what's the common denominator? For the last 5 years, it's been Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and they've repeatedly gone out in the early rounds of the playoffs because they don't have leadership. That's the thing that's missing. Now, what my hope is, and what I would tell you is that, yeah, you figure it out with these two, and hopefully maybe you can win a second-round playoff series. But I will again reiterate what I've said for months and months and going on a year on this show, since the day that Rudy got his contract. That contract will prevent this team from winning a championship because two things are at play with that contract. And I'll start with the one we've been talking about, respect and swagger. That contract damaged Rudy Gobert with his teammates, in my opinion. I've heard that more than once. And the issue is that Rudy's the highest paid player on this team by far.
Right.
By far. And there's nobody in that locker room who believes Rudy Gobert is their best or most important player. Not a soul. Everybody in that locker room knows Donovan Mitchell's their most important player. And look at how they have risen over this homestand, right? Donovan Mitchell's come back. He's played better. He's distributing more. He's getting his teammates involved.
Yes.
This team is winning. And I will again tell you, this team goes as Donovan Mitchell goes. It does not go as Rudy Gobert goes. Period. End of story. Tonight here in Los Angeles, this is a huge game for the Utah Jazz. Huge game. Because, again, what you're seeing is the Dallas Mavericks are playing good basketball now. They have gotten some energy here from the trade deadline. They are moving. They are only
Luka and Porzingis.
2.5 games behind. Right? Luka and Porzingis is a great example.
Yeah.
Those two didn't have chemistry. They didn't like each other. Porzingis is now gone.
Yes.
He's gone.
You really think that they're going to choose the big man over the guard?
Nobody's going to do that.
Nobody's doing that, man.
You know, like I think there are a lot of issues on this Jazz team that are small, minor issues. Shot selection, consistent defensive intensity. I mean, you can point to a lot of things where you need to turn a little dial here, turn a little dial there, right? Like, I'll be interested to see what the rotation looks like going forward. I would call Quinn Snyder a small issue. I don't think Quinn's like some huge gravitational issue that's preventing this team from winning.
But a lot of these small issues start to add up, and then, all of a sudden you're just not able to win playoffs.
And it takes that bigger issue, which is chemistry, right? These little issues that are bubbling under the surface. Well, the big one's broken through already. I got news for you. Like the eruption of the lack of chemistry in that locker room, that's a big issue. These little ones then find a way to come out, and all of a sudden Rudy's chirping about shot selection, and Rudy's chirping about defensive intensity, and you'll notice those things have not gotten better with him on the floor.
Yeah.
They've gotten better because this team has had to play a different style of basketball. That's probably what was needed. And I will just remind you, this team defensively, I think, is better when they're all not like, well, here, go ahead, Rudy's back there. Here, let me step out of the way. Because that's the defense this team played. I think we all have recognized that, right?
Yeah.
So without Rudy Gobert the last 6 games or whatever it was, their defensive intensity picked up, and they played much better. Now they were at home, sleeping in their own bed, eating mama's cooking. Everything was better, right?
Yes.
Now they're in Los Angeles against a super athletic team. Granted, it isn't very good at all. The Lakers have not played well at all.
Yeah.
But they are super athletic. And Russell Westbrook has always found a way to be that guy against this Utah Jazz team.
Something about it.
And we'll see how they handle LeBron. We'll see how they handle AD. Those two are playing. LeBron James is playing
great basketball.
Incredible basketball right now. Let's see what happens tonight. They're on the road. It's a team that the Jazz should beat, right? I mean, the Jazz, I don't think there's anybody in the world that thinks the Lakers are better than the Jazz. But my God, this is not a great matchup for the Jazz.
Yeah, it's definitely not a gimme. I mean, it's not, you're not playing the Houston Rockets anymore, I mean, again, the Lakers haven't played good basketball, but they're good enough to beat you. They're one of those kind of teams where you're better than them for sure, but, if you were to play a bad game on any given night, the Lakers could beat you. And I think that the Lakers are a team that it has expectations. And I think that the Lakers are fighting to get into the play-in tournament, which is wild to me. The Lakers are fighting just to make the postseason, which is crazy to me.
Yes.
So I just think that the Jazz, again, it all starts with leadership. It all starts with Donovan Mitchell. And I hate to say that, but it's the truth. Like, Donovan Mitchell needs to step up, lead this team, and become the vocal leader. And once that happens, I think, some
Yeah.
of those issues you talk about with, defensive intensity and shot selection, all those things somehow start to take care of themselves because there's a stated goal and a stated leader who expects things from you. That's why the Jordan Bulls worked. That's why Kobe and Shaq worked, because Kobe performed and Shaq competed with them. And that rose everybody's level.
Yeah, I just think that it's one of these things where this is make or break time. I hope people understand that, we don't just say things for shock value.
Shock Jock Radio.
Losing all the philosophical machinations that you hear about losing's a cancer. Losing is a really painful teacher.
Yeah.
All of that's true, and you're seeing that firsthand with this team. It's no longer a cliche. It's no longer wondering. Losing sucks.
Yeah.
And it brings out the absolute worst in people. And that's what we've gone through the last, going on a calendar year since they got knocked out of the playoffs last spring.
Yeah.
It's brought out, there have been some really bad things that have happened.
And that was a painful loss.
Oh,
It was a painful loss.
And I think, I don't know. I'll be interested to see if Quinn Snyder makes it through this. I again will say I don't think Quinn Snyder is the biggest problem, but I think he is a very hardline coach. He likes to do things his way. And whether it's rotations, whether it is, I personally don't think the Clippers series has anything to do with Quinn Snyder's in-game adjustments or in-series adjustments. I don't know what you could have changed.
There wasn't any options.
With Don and Mike both hurt, I don't know what you could have changed to win that series.
Yeah.
And I think, again, you really didn't help yourself roster-wise. This small ball adjustment with Rudy Gay has just simply not worked.
And he hasn't really been able to stay healthy either. And that's been...
Now he's got this knee,
Yeah, and that's what happens. You injure one thing, then in the rehab, something else gets hurt. And so you wind up being hurt for a long time. And I just think that this team, again, what we're really saying here, if you think about it, notice the conversations we're having. There's a small issue here, a small issue there. There's this little thing and that little thing, and you take all of those and you put them in a pile, and all of a sudden you got a hill. And that's the thing. This organization does not have, not everybody is pulling in the same direction. There's not a belief that, okay, if we all come together and we push, that we're going to get to the NBA Finals. And I think it's one of those tough situations, because I do think that's a cultural issue. I do think that's like a feel of the locker room with the guy you have issue. And that's why I think at the heart of it, obviously, yes, on the floor performance, but at the heart of it, in the locker room, the dynamic on the team, that's ultimately why you need roster change. You need more energy in this locker room. You need guys to push Donovan Mitchell. You need a great young talent.
You need a second star.
Yeah, you need a
second
young talent to come in here and push Donovan in practice every single day. Because
Yep.
right now, Donovan's the best player on this team. He's been the best player on this team, and there's not a close second. And I don't care what your opinion on Rudy Gobert is. He's a big man in the league, which automatically means, hey, you better be able to shoot the three, and he can't do that.
Well, and I thought Ben Anderson made a really good point the other day in his KSL.com piece, where he talked about the fact that the biggest asset Joe Ingles had was he was a left-handed player.
Mm-hmm.
And, you look at Nickel Alexander-Walker, and what is he? He's a left-handed finisher. He shoots right-handed, but he's a left-handed finisher and a left-handed passer.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real asset. So, when we talk about Quinn Snyder and whether or not he makes it or will he play young guys, let's see what he does with Alexander Walker. I think that's a really good question. So kudos to Ben on that. Dane, Funky, Orion, Edgar Garcia, Cody Strickland, good morning to you.
Hello.
Funky says it's nice to have this podcast learning a lot about the Utah Jazz. Keep it up. Appreciate that. Morning, boys. The Blind Swordsman DS says, Jake, Pound Town needs no action plans.
Well,
if you don't know how to get to Pound Town.
no, here's the deal. Here's the deal. Listen, when you're staying in your family's house and the opportunity presents itself, you got to go covert. You got to go black ops on it. You got to be under the radar. And sometimes that's difficult.
How come you don't play the scruff it when it's wet kind of drop to yourself?
And just kind of scruff it and play with it when it's wet.
Yeah, why don't
we as
you
dudes
know?
want to do that? We do.
Okay.
But, hey, it just is what it is.
Edgar Garcia says he wants this team to be his only because he feels like he is the best, which he is not. Watching Mitchell the last couple of games, I've noticed a maturity in accepting he has to share being a leader with Gobert for the time being. I don't think that's the case at all. I think what Donovan knows is that he has to share the basketball.
Yeah.
The way that you grow chemistry on this team, and this is in general, when you are elite at something, when you are the very best at something in a team atmosphere, you have to bring the other guys with you. There's a saying, and I don't remember what song we were listening to, but what's the point of being a millionaire when everybody around you is broke?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not fun. What's the point of being an elite basketball player when everybody else around you blows? That's not fun. You're not going to win.
Yeah.
So I think what Donovan's realized is he has to move the basketball. He has to drive and kick sometimes. Now he's going to shoot. He's going to shoot his threes. He's going to get to the rim. Hopefully a year from now he's an elite mid-range player, which I think he will be. But I think Donovan Mitchell realizes he's got to bring the other guys in because that's what leadership looks like right now.
Well, and I think the best example to compare to Donovan Mitchell would be Ja Morant, the way Ja goes about the game. I think, Ja Morant understands that he can out-athlete basically anybody in the NBA right now.
Sure.
But he also understands that it's not just him versus the world. He's got a guy in Desmond Bane who can shoot the three at a really high
he's got
rate.
a hell of a lot more talent around him
Right,
that is the proper age. And I know we had this debate on the show last week. I think Ja Morant's a superior player to Don.
Yeah.
I would take Ja every single day. Giggity says, morning, fellas. Why is Jake never buying gifts? Chris Carnes says Jake has sent Betos to the show several times.
Yeah. What the hell?
Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, how many times have I bought breakfast? Come on now.
Twice. Rudy Sanchez says, morning, fellas. You guys been right about a lot of things. Good work. Thank you. Giggity says, hey, Rudy Sanchez, these boys rarely get it wrong on anything. Yeah, and we're good looking, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a fucking unit.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
really. Brylark says, people act like basketball players are kids who go and hang out with each other's houses after getting home from school. And I think that's a great point by Don. Like, they're not, and they haven't been. And I said this yesterday, and go back and listen to the show. I was told a week ago that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert do not hate each other. But they also aren't friends. They don't hang out. They don't go out to dinner together. They don't, as you said, play video games together.
No, you don't always got to be, like the bestest of friends with people you work with. But at the end of the day, if you work towards a common goal that's beneficial to the team, that's what's first.
That's
amazing. I mean, it's literally amazing. And by the way, I think it should be said, it's interesting that it takes Chris Haynes getting Don to sit down.
Well, we talked about this yesterday because Jake and I are constantly around each other. We sweat on each other sometimes.
Hey, guys.
It's awkward. Anyway, but the point is we were talking about this yesterday while we were slaving over the hot stove at the Yelpatory.
Right, yeah.
And the point we made was, why did Chris Haynes get this interview and nobody in Salt Lake did? And it's the one thing that I'll continue to say is, I think one of the major issues hindering the fan base from truly gripping what's going on is you don't have media that has the audacity to tell the truth.
Yeah.
If you look at KSL Sports, and now KSL is a broadcast partner of the Jazz, right? You look at KSL, all of their news entities. You look at 1280 The Zone, that's the Jazz.
Yeah.
You look at somebody like Tony Jones. I think Tony gets a lot of inside information, but I think Tony's a little reticent or hesitant to break big news on the Jazz because the Jazz have the power to shut you out.
Yeah.
Because who's going to prevent them from doing that?
Yeah.
Right? Like in a town like New York, LA, Chicago, you look at the way the media operates in those towns, it's no holds barred. I guarantee you that's how you know so much of what's going on with Russell Westbrook and the Lakers.
Yeah.
It's why you know so much about what's going on with the Knicks. You look at Julius Randle. We know all about that situation because the media there has no fear of reprisal from the ball club.
Well, look at the Kyrie Irving situation, how the
Yeah.
media's handled that. I mean, I think that,
They went after him in those press conferences and those Zoom calls.
Yeah.
When Kyrie's like, respect my privacy.
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing based on the market. New York media does not care who you are, they're going to ask the question. LA media does not care who you are, they're going to ask the question.
Yeah, next question.
Yeah, thank you, Kyrie. Like, I think that, that's just how it is. And in Salt Lake, with all due respect, I don't think that a lot of times the blunt, don't care kind of question gets asked. The pertinent, don't care how this makes you feel question gets asked.
Yes.
And I think that, everyone jokes about, like, Bill Belichick and how he handles things and all the great, people in sports and how they handle the media. Well, the only reason they're doing that is because the media has the balls to ask the question, which I don't feel like, again, with all due respect to the folks who cover the Jazz, I don't feel like those kind of questions get asked on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and I think it's a very difficult line when you are the only game in town, and the Utah Jazz are the only professional franchise. I mean, obviously we all love our Utes and Cougars and we love college football, but if you look at the Utah Jazz, they're the only big boy in town, and I think that's your livelihood. And so I think there's a lot of guys
and I respect
that are hesitant. Yeah, so do I. I understand how difficult it is.
Yeah.
But, you look at, and this is my issue with the Salt Lake Tribune, with all, again, I keep saying with all due respect, I don't have a lot of respect for the coverage that we get from the Tribune. I think we get a lot of fluff. I think that there is very little substance or substantive reporting from the Tribune. I think there's very little.
Pieces for the sake of it. You're not writing pieces that have information compounded with either opinion or, because some of this stuff is just reporting, right? You're just basically taking the facts you got and you're putting it out there.
Donovan scored 25 and
X, Y, and Z happened. Okay, great. That's different reporting than like opinion, like facts plus opinion to create a great piece.
There's no critical commentary in this town on the Utah Jazz.
And that's why I think when people come to our show, they're like, whoa, you just said that Rudy is not the best player on the team, or you just said this, or you just said that. And it takes, we've noticed, it's funny, and some of the people who listen every day probably notice this too. We always get, once in a while, probably 2-3 times a month, we'll get a new commenter in the comments section. They'll come in and they'll say we're idiots and we don't know what we're talking about.
No,
then, like 3
they
days
say
later,
we're casuals.
Well,
You're casual.
and now, because we're such casuals, we even have shirts you can buy. How about that? Hey, let's buy some shirts, people.
Yes, by the way, if you would like to buy a You're a Casual shirt, the brand new hottest item in the world, yeah, they are for sale. $25 if you'd like a You're a Casual shirt to support the show. We always appreciate that. Hit us on DMs on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. The shirts are $25. We accept Venmo or in-person handshakes.
This is fucking America.
It is. The bottom line is, I think the Jazz are. I think the Jazz know where they are. And Garcia, good morning to you. He says Quinn is the issue. 0 adjustments. Maybe not the only issue, but definitely troublesome. I don't know. Is replacing Quinn Snyder a fix to what's wrong with this team?
I don't think there's one fix to what's wrong
I
with
would
this
agree.
team. I think the reality of the situation is you have a lot of question marks on this team. I think the only human being in the organization who's not a question mark, well, I guess it'd be 3. It'd be Ryan Smith, Danny Ainge, and Donovan Mitchell. Those are the 3 guys that are not going anywhere, no matter what happens. They're just not. And I think everyone else is an option.
Jeremy Bolton says, well, if it isn't Jake's and Monty's. Exactly right, Jeremy. Good morning, my friend. Donovan, Edgar Garcia says, Donovan, I feel like took the criticism he received and worked on his game. Rudy, like you guys said, didn't care to listen. I think that's a big, I think Rudy is just
prideful.
Prideful is probably the right word.
He's prideful.
I would agree with that. Dop Hop says, Real Salt Lake won a championship.
Yeah, next question.
Wait, what is that noise? Oh, that's paint drying. Sorry.
And you're a guy who loves the Premier League.
I am a huge soccer fan. Huge soccer fan. I really am. Eric and Raleigh says audio's down and now it's back. God dog it.
Listen, man.
Disgusting comparing Quinn to Sloan, and Tom Tom Gugliotta, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think Quinn's done. Yeah, Quinn's not even in the same atmosphere as
Yeah,
Jerry.
Eric C says Ja could top 3 players sooner than later. Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that. JP Shanahan says, I don't think Utah has the luxury of bringing in players in their respective prime. No, but this is the thing that's so frustrating with development.
Yeah.
This is the Quinn Snyder question. Can you hand Quinn Snyder a Nickeil Alexander-Walker and say, make him a top 5 player on this roster? Can you hand Quinn Snyder Rudy Gobert and say, develop his offensive game? The problem is NBA teams don't develop players anymore. Chris Brickley does.
Yeah.
And if you look at Donovan Mitchell's growth, and again, it probably sounds like I'm siding with Don. I'm not. Point of fact, if you look at Donovan Mitchell's growth, what has he done exponentially better, to say much better this year? Well, he's extended his range on the 3. It's easy range now. Well, because that's what we saw him doing over the summer with Chris Brickley, right? And my guess is now you're going to see him turn into an elite mid-range player because he doesn't want to get hurt. And how did he get hurt? Going to the basket.
Yep.
So you're going to see him turn into an elite mid-range player. Everybody, it's the hottest new trend in the NBA. That sexy MFer, he's a mid-range star.
Yep.
Anyway, my point is,
Yeah.
what have we seen Rudy get better at offensively? Pick and roll. That's what we've seen him improve on, right? Set a pick at the top, high pick and roll to the basket. Conley throws him a lob and he dunks it. That's his game. And it's a good one. There's value in that until you get into the playoffs, and then you can't do that. So It'll be interesting to see. Pressure burst pipes, man. Let's see how Rudy handles it. Does Rudy develop his game? I don't know. We'll see. Are you guys going to the Jazz game in LA? Excuse me while I cough. Are you guys going to the Jazz game in LA? I'm just going to sit back and let Jake answer this question.
The answer is no. And the reason it's no is because we get up at 4 a.m. Pacific time to do this show at the same time, and we work at Yelp. So no.
Did I ask?
Go ahead and go. Go ahead.
Did I ask to offer? Go
ahead.
Offer to buy tickets even?
Yes, you did.
Did I beg you? Did I get on my hands and knees and roll over like a dog and beg you?
Oh, I thought you were going a different direction with that. My bad.
Hey, now.
Yeah, I've been immunized.
Yeah.
Anyway, Brandon Whiteside says Don could only be signed to max contract per NBA rules. Rudy was up for Supermax. It doesn't matter why. We've talked about that exact thing.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter why. Donovan was on a rookie deal.
Just because dude is eligible doesn't mean you pay him.
Yeah, it would. There's no doubt. Does anybody argue the Rudy Gobert contract was a mistake? I mean, paying him $41 million a year was a huge mistake.
Sorry if you're offended by that.
Yeah, I mean, look, at this point, I think paying Mike Conley was understandable. I would not have done it. Bringing Mike Conley back, totally understandable. I get it. I wouldn't have done it.
I think
I would have used this year to totally tear this team apart and rebuild it.
Right. But
That's
I think
what I'd
the
have
thing
done.
with the front office at that time, because I think it's so important when we talk about the past to understand the context and like the feel around the team at that time. The feel around the team at that time was, hey, Mike was hurt in the Clippers series. Don got hurt playing in the Clippers series. And we feel like if we have those two guys healthy, that we would have been able to beat them. Which is why, if you remember earlier this year, what did we get? We got Mike sitting out back-to-backs and, a lot of injury management and, hey, we're not going to prioritize being the 1 seed. But now, this season, basically at the 30-game mark a couple months ago, kind of took a turn. I mean, this season went downhill. COVID ravaged the team.
Yes,
you
it did.
had some injuries, and now you're not in the place you expected to be. All of that said, you're still going to get into the postseason. So, and that really ultimately is what matters. So, I agree with the idea that, hey, they just got to get in, but I also agree with the idea that this is a flawed basketball team right now. And when you start playing the best teams in the league, they're going to exploit those flaws, and frankly, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it.
And here's a question I would pose to Ryan Smith. Do you want to be Vivek Ranadive? Does anybody know who that is? It's the owner of the Sacramento Kings.
Who the fuck are you?
Bought the team, kept it in Sacramento. Oh, we're going to win a championship. We're going to hire Luke Walton.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Oh, we're going to win a championship. Oh, Vlade Divac is our GM. Or do you want to be Peter Guber and
First of all,
Joe Lacob?
Peter Guber.
Okay,
That last name, though.
my man, do you know who Peter Guber is? He's
No.
one of the most powerful men in entertainment and one of the richest dudes in the country.
U.S. Americans.
And he's a co-owner of the Golden State Warriors with Joe Lacob.
Who the f*** is that guy?
Joe
Man.
Lacob bought the Golden State Warriors, and they put in a solid plan to win a championship.
Yeah.
And they drafted well. They went and hired Bob Myers. They went and got guys. They completely changed the culture of the Golden State Warriors. And how did they do it? They pissed everybody off. You're letting Monte Ellis and Baron Davis go? What? You guys are idiots. You drafted Steph Curry, 54 pounds, soaking wet with rocks in his cock.
You're casual.
Well, it turns out they had an idea of what they were doing. So, Ryan Smith, do you want to be Joe Lacob and Peter Guber? Or do you want to be Vivek Ranadive? Yes! You want to do what's got to be done? And again, I haven't wavered on this at all. Trade Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
Blow this roster up. Build around Donovan Mitchell. Which, again, I'm told that's exactly what they told Donovan Mitchell is they're going to build the team around him.
Yep.
And Donovan has never demanded a trade. But do you want to do that? Cool. Do you want to upgrade the arena? Do that. Do you want to bring in people smarter than you? You brought in Danny Ainge. I would say you're off to a good start.
Yeah.
Now blow this thing up. Let's lose for a year, and then let's go win 3 and 5. Because, by the way, did anybody notice what Donovan Mitchell said when Chris Haynes asked him, hey, where do you think you'll be in 5 years? Did anybody hear his answer to that question? On this podcast, posted up with Chris Haynes. Donovan Mitchell, one of the last questions he was asked, hey, Don, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
Remember what his answer was? Multiple championships. Where do you think he got that from? Because he was told, we're doing everything we can do. We're going to spare no expense to win championships here in Utah.
Yeah.
If you want to win, and I'm telling you, you want to win 2 or 3 in 5 years, trade Rudy Gobert and blow this roster up.
I'm for real.
You want to watch Donovan Mitchell win a championship with the New York Knicks or the Brooklyn Nets? Keep Rudy Gobert.
Are you out of your goddamn mind?
Keep paying Mike Conley. Keep paying Bojan Bogdanovic. Yesterday, some guy got into me on Twitter about how I don't understand the way that Quinn Snyder is ruining Bojan Bogdanovic.
You're casual.
Bro, he's not ruining Bojan Bogdanovic. Bojan Bogdanovic is soft. He's a guy that when he scores 20 points, generally they win.
Yeah.
But he can't create his own shot because he's not athletic. He needs help. He needs drive and kick.
It's the truth. 100% the truth.
You want to know if the Jazz are serious? The moment the season ends, start chopping heads. That's why I've said I'd change Quinn Snyder in the offseason.
Facts.
I would change Quinn Snyder and his staff. I would bring in.
Not because he's done a horrible job.
No, because he's been here, 9 years?
Yeah. 8-9 years.
I think it's 9 years almost.
Yeah.
He's been here almost 9 years, let's say. 8 to 10 years. I think it's 9 years.
Yeah.
He's been here 9 years, bro. And they need a new voice. And you've got to play these young guys. Jared Butler is dying on the vine right now.
Yeah.
So you want to win? The first thing I'd do in the offseason is fire Quinn Snyder. Not because he's a terrible coach. Not because he's done a bad job. We need a new voice. We need new momentum. We need new energy. We need something other than shoot 53s, hope for the best. All right, see you at practice tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be the offense.
Let's get more videos of Rudy Gobert in practice shooting a bunch of threes so the fan base can think that that's going to start happening in games. That seems smart.
Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Mr. E says, but Jerry Sloan coached the Jazz to conference finals on his 3rd year. Snyder is in his 8th. Okay. JP, exactly. What did JP say? I don't think Utah has the luxury of bringing in players in their respective primes. Mr. E says, and Garcia says, JP, exactly. We keep signing past their prime players that could have helped 2 or 3 years ago.
Correct.
But, okay, let's surmise that no free agent ever anywhere on the planet would be like, oh, yeah, I want to play for the Utah Jazz. Do you get a Book of Mormon when you sign your contract?
Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself.
Right? Because that's what the perception is. Oh, I'm going to go to Utah. There's no nightlife, and the Mormons are going to attack me. And okay, great. Trade for him. How do you build championships? Because I got news for you. 9 out of 10 teams, unless you're the Warriors, don't draft it.
Yeah.
You buy it. And how do you buy it? Well, you trade James Harden and you get Ben Simmons and you get Seth Curry, right? Like that's how you win in this league. You go and get Kevin Durant. You go and get James Harden. Well, you don't win with James Harden. My bad. See what I did there? Like, shave the beard, dude, at some point.
Skippy.
You want to win? Shave the beard, fatty. No, I'm kidding.
Come on, let's go, Schlep Rock.
I mean, he was fat.
I'm kidding.
He was fat.
I'm kidding. My point is, listen, there's nothing that's stopping you from making trades, and that's how 9 out of 10 teams win in this league. I look at the Chicago Bulls. Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan is so many on this show will tell you. Alex Caruso,
Headband,
my brother.
Alex Caruso.
Why are the Bulls winning? Because they went out and got new energy. They got new life.
Yes.
Right? They're tied for, I think they're actually tied for the top spot in the East. Right? Like, all I'm saying is, it's not that hard. It's not that long of a road. If you keep Donovan Mitchell, right? Who on this roster would you keep?
Donovan Mitchell.
There's two guys I would hang on to. I would keep Donovan Mitchell and I would hang on to Jordan Clarkson. I would blow everybody else up. I would trade Rudy Gobert as soon as I could trade Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
The first sucker that's born every day in this league, I'm in. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Right? I would do what I needed to do because that instantly gives you more flexibility. You can't draft talent because you don't have draft picks, and you didn't get really anything worth of value. You sent out draft picks, which is still mind-numbing to me.
Too bad.
But, the Jazz tried. The Jazz absolutely tried. They tried. They wanted to. I think the Jazz would have loved to have been a third team. And I think, we've talked about the names.
Yeah.
They tried.
Yeah.
They couldn't get it done.
Yeah. And I think, they've been at this starting point. Like, the starting line to championships is making tough decisions and letting people go and making trades. I mean, that's what you have to do. I mean, again, it's like what Bill Belichick did for, 10 years or 15 years while Brady was his quarterback. Like, you made tough decisions to ensure that Brady always had a defense that could back him up. You made tough decisions to make sure that your money was always right.
Well, with the Patriots, they built defense because they had Tom Brady.
Yeah. So
they could rely on Chris Hogan to catch a football, and the defense but what do anyway.
Yeah.
Dwayne Boone says Jazz are in the 4th position in the West. It's not the end of the world. Well, it is, because if you're in the 4th position in the West, but the problem is not they're in the 4th position.
The seeding literally means nothing.
Yeah, I mean, unless they fall to the 5th spot, the 4th spot means nothing. I mean, home court advantage in this league,
it's a fluke.
It doesn't mean a whole lot early in the playoffs because home teams lose in the playoffs. And this Jazz team has a stylistic problem, not a home court advantage problem. But having said that, if they don't have home court advantage on the Dallas Mavericks, I don't know how you win that series. I really don't. Disgusting comparing Quinn to Sloan. We got to stop doing this shit, man. Stop comparing LeBron and Jordan. Stop comparing Jerry Sloan and every other Jazz coach. Oh, Tyrone Corbin was no Jerry Sloan. No shit, Sherlock. We get it.
He's a brilliant guy.
Right? Like, we get it. Jerry Sloan's one of the greatest coaches in the history of the NBA.
Like, ever.
Let's stop comparing everybody to Phil Jackson, to Red Auerbach, and
Come on, man.
Quinn Snyder is a very good coach. When he's not the coach of the Jazz, he'll get another job.
Yeah.
He is a really good coach. It's just time for a change. Quinn Snyder has not been a bad coach. He's not currently a bad coach. He's not the reason you're losing.
Yep.
But you need change. You need a new voice, is what I'm saying. A couple more on the Jazz. Let's see. Eric C. says, Salt Lake has RSL and a women's team. No? I personally don't give a shit about the regular season. Brandon Whiteside says, national media is stirring up false rumors. Don just laughed at and refuted all the trash the national media was pushing. He did not refute anything that the national media is pushing.
Yeah.
Tell me one thing that Donovan Mitchell refuted. Because he never said Rudy Gobert's name. He never said that he doesn't that he is not wanting to leave.
Listen to this answer. Chris Haynes asked him straight up, is the relationship in good standing? And this is Donovan Mitchell's long-ass winded answer. Listen to this.
I think it's good. I think it's cool where we're at. I think, like I said, when you work with someone,
I think it's good where we're at.
Here, I'll play that little portion again.
I think it's good. I think it's cool where we're at.
I think it's good where we're at. He didn't say, "Oh, it's great. We're friends. I love Rudy. That's my dude." Like, there's no issue. The national media, they're making all this stuff up. Rudy and I are great. He said it's good. I'm cool where it's at.
I think it's good. I think it's cool where we're at.
He didn't say we're friends, we're buddies, we're pals. He said it's cool. I'm good with where we're at.
When you work with someone and you have something that you want to get to, and you have people who are competitive around you. You have people that are competitive. When I say around, I mean our teammates and coaching staff. When you have two people that are competitive, like, you want to ultimately be the best. I would take that as opposed to two dudes who just want to sit on their ass and do nothing. You know what I mean? Like, you have two guys who are going to go out there and compete. He's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. I'm a 3-time All-Star. Like, we're going to find ways to get better individually and collectively as a group. I'll take that. I don't think, I think everybody thinks that the league is just like, everybody's like, boom, we hang out. Like, this isn't college. College was different. College, you're in the dorms. It's a different vibe. And now you go about your business.
You go about your business.
So again, I just ask, what did the national media get wrong there? What did we get wrong there? When we said they don't like each other, they're not friends, but they don't need to be friends to coexist, is exactly what I've said for 10 days on this
you don't
show.
always got to be, like the bestest of friends with people you work with.
I've said that for 10 days on this show.
Again, notice what he's not saying. And this is
the one thing he's not saying is the two words next to each other.
Rudy Gobert.
Or independent. He never said Rudy. He never said Gobert, and he never said Rudy Gobert. He's never said his name. He called him big fella, two people, we.
Seating doesn't necessarily matter, but it's like, how can we be the best when it's time? And like I said, it starts with me and big fella.
Starts with me and big fella.
Me and big fella.
And like I said, it starts with me and big fella.
Not me and Rudy. Not me and Rudy Gobert. Me and big fella. He never, ever says his name. I'm telling you, and Chris Haynes was right. Donovan should write a book, because the stuff that we've heard that we haven't said on this show that's going on behind the scenes is ridiculous. Now, how much of that is true? I don't know. I couldn't confirm it. But what I can tell you is the stuff that they're not talking about would blow your mind.
And that's what I think people need to understand in these situations. It's not necessarily what Donovan verbally said.
That's right.
It's what he did not say.
And how he said what he said. It's very clear. Like, I've been doing this a long time. Not to keep throwing my resume at you. I've been doing this a long time. This is so reminiscent of Kobe and Shaq. It is. They never said each other's name. They wouldn't talk about each other. They'd talk around each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is exactly what Donovan's doing. I'm telling you, this is this is Horace Grant leaving the Bulls for the Orlando Magic.
And like I said, it starts with me and big fella.
I'm telling you, man. There is, and as plainly as I can say it, these two guys don't have a relationship.
Yeah.
Period. That's the best way to describe it. They don't despise each other. When the lights are on and it's time to play basketball, we're going to chest bump. Everything's
going to be good.
I'm going to throw you the ball. I'm not like this is it. But where did it get with Kobe and Shaq? Kobe refused to pass Shaq the basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he got called out for that, Kobe refused to shoot the basketball and would only pass the basketball. I don't think Donovan's that kind of child. But that's where we are.
You don't always got to be, like the bestest of friends with people you work with.
I'm just telling you. My ass is killing me in the most uncomfortable chair ever. And Donovan and Rudy do not have a relationship.